Welcome to Restoring Men in History. Affordability, it's on people's minds. A lot of people don't think a lot of things are affordable. What's one big thing that the prices keep increasing on? When the Affordable Care Act passed, there were a lot of promises made. Were they fulfilled? No. We got a big piece here with a lot of research, with a lot of stats. Now, how do you make life more affordable? A big way would be to reduce health care premiums. The Affordable Care Act didn't do that. I call it the Unaffordable Care Act. It actually has increased premiums for millions and millions of Americans. Generally, if you worked for a corporation, your premium increased. If you're ambitious, you're hardworking, you don't want this act because it's not helping you. It's not helping you save money for a house. You want a house, and it's going to keep going up. And remember when it was coming up, they said, all these different politicians on the Democratic side, it was passed by the Democrats. Wholeheartedly, they can own that. And it has failed. It still needs subsidies. By the way, what were the multiple promises, but it was going to decrease healthcare costs. Healthcare costs have increased. Of course, some of that is natural, but some of that is because of Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, the Unaffordable Care Act. What is the problem? Some people are wanting to go to bigger government and socialism. This is an example of a big government program trending towards socialism that did not work. It failed. It's not just changing the people that run it. They tried different tactics. It still failed. It still needs subsidies almost 15 years later, and it's costing you. And when you increase the debt, that's another tax on you, and that increases your price at the grocery and other places. This debt is unsustainable. How do we get rid of it? How do we eliminate it? So you men that are ambitious, so you men that are hardworking can rise, can get ahead in life, and you can. But it's going to be up to you men to do it. The shutdown, what was that about? One of the parts of it was not extending the Obamacare subsidies, okay? I don't think the Republicans are to hold to that, but here's the thing. If you're going to give in on that, and yet you promise to decrease the size and scope of government, clean up the corruption, and do all these things, DOGE, we were excited about, by the way, Gen Z, excited about DOGE. My friends, excited about DOGE and decreasing the size and scope, because we know if you decrease the size and scope of government, you not only have more freedom, you have a higher standard of living. By the way, last week, Congress did this resolution, the House, standing against socialism, calling it out. So now they can act, but I have no faith in them. The House Republicans. We'll see. We'll see if they hold. I think they're going to give in. But if they're going to give in, they should give in for something, right? Like if you want to help people for 3 months because they're on it, and you want to help families for 3 months, you say, we'll give you January, February, March, and then by then you've got to have your state do it. Because there's a lot of problems with it. It failed. And also, it's unconstitutional. There is no enumerated power in the Constitution for health care. That was left to the states and the people. Per the 10th Amendment, it's not enumerated. It is not enumerated in the Constitution. Let's show this poll real quickly. Public trust in the federal government, which has been low for decades, has increased modestly since 2023. As of 2024, 22% of Americans, that's very low, say they trust the government in Washington to do what is right just about always, or most of the time, 21%. Last year, 16% said they trusted the government just about always or most of the time. The latest Rasmussen report, National Telephone and Online Survey, we'll put this up, finds that 80% of likely U.S. voters believe the federal government is corrupt. All right, so 80% of you believe the federal government is corrupt. Most of you don't trust the federal government. And that's why we wanted DOGE. And then number 3, let's look at the big fact. They have spent over $38 trillion, Congress after Congress, and both parties are responsible for that. Not just one, both parties. So by the way, if you don't trust the government and you believe it's corrupt, why would we ever give them any more power? We need to restrain them to their enumerated powers. Okay, so we're going to get to this great piece, and I think it will explain a lot and how it has made your life more unaffordable, the Unaffordable Care Act. So here's his article, The Affordable Care Act, Why America's Biggest Health Reform Model Ultimately Failed. Timothy Alexander, this is a great piece. When the ACA's marketplace launched in 2014, supporters assured Americans that competition, and this is a promise, here's what you want to look at for the government when they promise something and they don't fulfill it, that competition would drive down premiums. That did not happen for millions and millions of Americans, for hardworking Americans, for people at corporate America. Instead, marketplace premiums surged across much of the country. This is accurate. The early years saw some stability, but by 2016, remember, people were tired of it by then, and the promise was Trump was going to end it. Although John McCain and a few other Republican senators, you know who they are, stopped it, or Republicans would have repealed it, and that would have been better for this country and better for this republic and better for you men. The system began showing strain. In 2017, several states saw breathtaking premium spikes. For a 40-year-old non-smoker on the benchmark silver plan, premiums rose by 145% in Phoenix. Remember, the promise was it's going to decrease premiums. That did not happen. This is a failure of big government. This is why you don't want to go to socialism. Many factions on this side that promoted this, wanted the company, and they said it on video. I remember one of the architects watching a video of him saying, this is the way to get us to a single-payer system. With a single-payer system, you will have less choices. They will have no competition. They will give you what they want. It'll be like Ford, we'll give you that black, and that's what you'll have to like. 71% in Birmingham, more than 60% in parts of Oklahoma. All right, these extreme jumps were not a statistical fluke. They were not. They were a market recalibration. Insurers had underestimated the cost. By the way, if you look at government programs, they always underestimated. Medicare was supposed to cost this. It cost this. And these entitlements, the debt running up, what does the debt affect you? It's a tax on you, it costs you at the kitchen table and in other areas. And I think it's because many of those reps wanted it sold and they wanted to move to socialism. After millions with expensive medical needs entered the risk pool, of course I predicted that. I said, how are you going to cover all these people? Of course your costs are going to go up. We're going to pay for that. Middle class are going to pay for it. Hardworking Americans are going to pay for it. And it's gone way up. It's not just like $50 a month that everybody paid to help somebody out. And by the way, it was unconstitutional. If it was going to be done, it should have been done at the state. This is ridiculous. Over time, these increases compounded. By 2020, get this, premiums on the individual market were more than double what they had been before the ACA. Middle-class consumers who earn too much, watch how it penalizes the middle class here, to qualify for subsidies felt the full impact. Families reported paying more than a mortgage for coverage that left responsible for huge deductibles. Remember, the promise was it's going to lower your premiums. I don't know what do you want to call this? A lie, misleading, whatever you want to call it, call it. You can read the whole Constitution, healthcare is not in there. Federal government has no independence. So even as subsidies insulated some lower income consumers from the sticker shock, unsubsidized Americans were what? He goes on to say, hammered. The Affordable Care Act is not affordable. What a shocker. The way government names programs is always funny. This is what? Redistribution of wealth. It's moving away from the free market toward socialism. And that's the plan of some factions, right? Cloward Piven said, overwhelm the system. This is a plan. It hurts you. It hurts ambitious men. It hurts hardworking people. Many small business owners, self-employed workers, and freelancers and early retirees found themselves paying thousands more per year. That's a lot of money. In many cases, offered narrow doctor networks. So you were going to, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. That was another promise, failed. That's less choice, that's less freedom, and higher deductibles. So you're losing on deductibles now. You can go back to FDR, who put on price controls, and it started this whole mess. Then companies offered insurance. So anyway, let's keep going. While it's true that employer premiums had been rising for years, ACA mandates added new cost pressures. By 2025, this is 2025, the average family premium, get this, see if you can afford this, in employer coverage sits around $27,000 a year. That is pathetic. That is because of the Affordable Care Act. We need to end it, and it's going to be up to you men. I don't think they're going to do it next month. This month, it's December. Big government has failed you. And now there's a dialogue going on about moving to bigger government and socialism. That's the last thing we need to do. We need to move to a limited government that was ratified with amendments. When they end the ACA cost, the cost will come down. We'll have more competition, and we will decrease the size and scope of government. So hardworking people in the middle class can thrive and have a better life and more purchasing power. Now, if you want to do it in the States. All right, the promise that the ACA would bend the cost curve, quote, that was a quote, bend the cost curve, downward never materialized. It never happened. Another false promise. Costs bent upward. Premiums weren't the only numbers climbing. Deductibles, co-pays surged. So much so that millions of Americans became what policy analysts call underinsured. And I've talked to guys that have dropped their insurance and go without because of this. On the ACA marketplaces, silver plans touted as the standard option, often carry deductibles above $5,000. You got to pay $5,000 before you can use it. Bronze plans, the cheapest option, frequently carry deductibles near or above the legal out-of-pocket maximum. Imagine paying thousands of dollars in premiums, guys, and then you can't even use it till you spend $7,500 before your insurance begins. So even people with job-based insurance, long considered the gold standard, have seen their out-of-pockets cost rise. So what happens if the government makes employers comply with things and increase the cost for corporations? Well, you know they're going to pass it on to the consumer. They're going to pass it on to you, right? Employers facing rising premiums and ACA compliance requirements shifted costs to the workers through higher deductibles, coinsurance, and more aggressive cost-sharing structures. All right, this is bad, right? As a result, many Americans now would care. We talked about that. So he's saying the ACA expanded access to insurance cards, but not necessarily access to actual health care. If you like your plan, you can keep it. What was that? You heard this over and over and over. If you like your plan, you can keep it. Now, I had a buddy in Los Angeles. He got on this plan. Guess what happened? He couldn't go to his lifelong doctor. He was living near LA, right near LA. Finally found a doctor he liked in San Diego, and all the time he would drive down to San Diego, and then he said the deductibles weren't right, it cost more than much than it said, and it was much more expensive than they said it was going to be when you started seeing doctors, actually. So, again, who's this going to be up to? This is a republic, it's going to be up to you men. The phrase became the defining promise of the ACA and ultimately its biggest credibility crisis. Millions of Americans received what? Get this, and I saw this posted. Cancellation letters. I read the letters. A lot of people got canceled ahead of the ACA's 2014 launch because their existing plans did not meet new federal standards. These plans often customized lower cost policies chosen by individuals or small businesses, and they were declared what? Non-compliant. So you got a problem there. So for a lot of people, your cost is going to go up for less choices. Millions and millions of people, that is. The backlash was swift and bipartisan. PolitiFact named the promise it's the lie of the year in 2013. So the administration scrambled to offer temporary extensions for some non-compliant plans, but the damage was done. Public trust faltered, and many Americans felt blindsided. I remember. This broken promise formed a lasting scar on the ACA's reputation. Don't trust government. Don't trust the federal government. No faith in it, because look what they did. They made all these promises, and they don't seem to care now. They still haven't ended it. It's still on the table. The Democrats are holding on to it. The Democrats want this. This is a Democrat problem. If it wasn't for the Democrats, this would be over. Still. Yeah, a few Republicans voted against it, but it was very close in that vote after Trump won. It was very close to being over. To control costs within the ACA, insurance relied on narrow networks, provider networks that included fewer doctors and fewer. Now you got fewer doctors and hospitals to go to. The strategy allowed insurers to negotiate lower rates but drastically reduced consumer choice. You get less choices. By 2021, market-based plans on average included around 40% of local physicians, so nearly a quarter of enrollees were in plans that included no more than a quarter of doctors in their region. Less choice. Worse for you. Specialist access became more difficult. Top hospitals were actually excluded from network lists. He goes on to say, people with chronic conditions struggled to find in-network care. The ACA promised what? More access. In reality, many got left. Narrow networks became the norm. So in the early marketplace years, Aetna, Humana, United Healthcare, he said, announced significant losses on ACA plans. What a shocker. It's not a shocker. Now already, by 2017, insurer participation in the exchanges had collapsed. So it's collapsed. Dropping from 395 insurers in the pre-ACA individual market to just 218. Remember, this is big government. This is a big government program that failed, so you don't want to be going to socialism or bigger government. This was a great example of trying to do this moving towards socialism. It wasn't full socialism because we still had private plans. Millions of Americans found themselves with only one insurer in their county. Terrible. In some regions, there were temporary gaps where no ACA plan was available. A system built on competition became, in many areas, a monopoly. If you don't have competition, what's going to happen? Price is going to go up. So when there's only one option, what else happens? No incentive to innovate or to restrain cost. So also what happened? It encouraged consolidation, hospital mergers. Hospitals merged aggressively throughout the 2010s. Smaller hospitals were unable to navigate all the reporting requirements. And again, a lot of times what happens, and here's what we want to talk about, big government, Dodd-Frank, other plans. What happens when you make a lot of reporting requirements? Financial pressure. And the big corporation can hire all the accountants and attorneys and everything you need, but you guys that are starting a small business or something can't do that. So who does that help? I think it helps the big insurers and the big hospitals because they can afford to meet all these regulations. Insurers grappled with ACA rules. So you notice how big government can help big corporations. That's not the free market though. Don't misdiagnose it. That's moving away from the free market. Free market is they're not helping, they're not giving subsidies to this plan or any plan. They're not giving away subsidies and it's a free market and you're competitive. And they're not writing tons of regulations to help the big corporations who can afford that. You see the difference? Because a lot of people are misdiagnosing it and blaming what they call capitalism. I prefer the free market because what we want is a free market. We want a free market, a more free market than we have today. And we don't want a big government. We want a limited government that was ratified. 2021, the American Rescue Plan expanded ACA subsidies dramatically. So you're increasing. It was supposed to stand on its own, by the way. One of the promises was this is going to take care of itself. And in fact, it's going to reduce the debt. Some people said on the Democratic side. It did not do that. They still need the subsidies. It is failing. That is a failure. It was supposed to stand on its own, and it's not, and still needs subsidies that you pay for. Tax on you. A tax on middle-class Americans and hardworking Americans. Changes were extended through 2025. This is coming up. I don't think the Republicans are going to hold firm. But if they give in, they should get something for it. They should say, all right, we'll give it to March, and then this program is over. March 2026. Done. It's finally a win for the people that voted because of Doge and Elon Musk and all of that were voting to decrease the size and scope, which they knew would make life more affordable and better and give us a higher standard of living and opportunity, more opportunity for ambitious and hardworking people. While they reduced premiums for many and boosted marketplace enrollment to record highs, they also introduced new distortions. All right, he talks about for older Americans near retirement, it became financially advantageous to reduce hours or stop working. That's not a disincentive to work, which they've done with these programs. Maybe we'll take each program and go through Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. So someone earning $20,000 that was older annually could pay almost nothing for the ACA plan, earn $65,000 and they might pay over $12,000. You see how that's a disincentive to work hard? That's actually a disincentive, and that's what socialism does. Creates disincentives to work hard, be ambitious, think up new ideas. Workers with employee-sponsored insurance received no help at all. So again, it punished the workers, didn't it? That's what socialism does. It punishes the hard workers, the good work. Because anyone offered job-based coverage, even expensive low-quality coverage, was barred from receiving marketplace subsidies. This ESI penalty created resentment among the middle-class workers, listen to this, who felt punished for having jobs. That's not what you want in society. You don't want middle-class workers to feel punished for having jobs. So what created this problem? The big federal government, going beyond its enumerated powers, created this problem where middle-class workers felt punished for having jobs. It creates a resentment. Again, we need smaller, limited constitutional government, not bigger government. See the problem? You don't reward failed big government with more money. It would be like putting an alcoholic in a bar, leaving him there all the time, giving him access to liquor. We know what they did. They failed. They spent over $38 trillion, Congress after Congress after Congress. So we don't want them to have programs like this. All right, subsidy cliffs also created harsh marginal tax penalties. Small raises could cost thousands. This discouraged upward mobility. What do we want in America? We were about upward mobility and created perverse incentives for people to avoid raises, promotions, and additional hours, he says. This is his writing now, based on his research. The ACA defenders called this the price of broader coverage. Critics call it a disincentive embedded into federal law. One of the ACA's most ambitious promises was to reduce healthcare spending growth. The phrase bend the cost curve became central to the law's message. Yet from 2010, get this is important, to 2025, national health expenditure continued upward. Total spending rose from approximately $2.6 trillion in 2010 to $5 trillion. That's trillion, not billion. So in just from 2010 to 2023, 2.6 trillion to 5 trillion. That's epic failure of your federal government. The share of GDP devoted to healthcare, roughly 17% at the law's passage, still hovers around 17 to 18%. with projections showing it's rising above 20% in the coming decade. And again, you may have no choice if we can't get a hold of this, and it's up to you men. All right, they tried different programs, the ACA's pilot programs, accountable care organizations, bundled payments, readmission penalties. It had mixed results. So they tried to fix it. They have been unable to fix it. Again, the problem is the system. It doesn't work, and it doesn't even make sense to have it at the federal level. If you want to have it at your state. All right, despite billions spent on the new bureaucracy, the healthcare curve remains upward. So we haven't even talked about corruption and fraud today. We just talked about this failure. Does a bureaucrat know best for your health? Of course not. So it's also illogical. It's also illogical to have it up with bureaucrats at Washington making healthcare decisions, not with your local doctors or your community, right? All right, it created more rules. For insurers, it created actuarial tiers, essential health benefits. I remember some people having to take extra things they didn't want. Despite all this complexity, the system efficiency did not meaningfully improve, he says. Administrative costs remain high. Billing departments expanded, not decreased. Paperwork enormous. I remember the infamous healthcare government launch in 2013. That was a disaster. Remember how much money was spent on that? And it eroded public trust, he goes on to say. Right, each big program you try, if you say it's going to cost this much, which they did with Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, and it costs this much, you're going to lose trust. If you spend over $38 trillion, you're going to lose our trust. You can't be trusted with money, so there should never be a tax increase. And we should be reducing taxes because they spend more than they have anyway. They never stay within budget. So we should not be rewarding them with any more power. The cancellation letters, the broken promises, the surprising premium increases, not surprising to me, I predicted it. I always ask this about a government program, who's going to pay? And it's usually going to be hardworking people in the middle class. There's this battle going on today. This is a failure. We do not want to move to socialism. We want to move to more of a free market and away from this. That will make life more affordable. That will give you more purchasing power. All right, over time, many Americans concluded the law had not matched its rhetoric. Right, at least Americans saw that. The ACA did not expand coverage. Millions gained Medicaid. Millions more bought subsidized exchange plans. And there's the key. It didn't work. These plans had to be subsidized by the middle class and hardworking Americans. So it didn't fit. It was supposed to stand on its own. Let us remember that. So there was some pre-existing condition protections that lifted fear for some families, he goes on to say, but a lot of people pay for that. And also that should have been done at the state level and in a limited way. This is an epic disaster. But if you do that, you're picking groups and the government's picking, right? All right, costs went up, choices went down, markets consolidated, competition shrank, work disincentives grew, trust eroded. For small employers, it raised cost. And I remember talking to people in LA, and they would not want to hire. I was going to these appointments. They didn't want to get past a certain point. And they would say, we don't want to get to a certain point of employees. So you actually had a disincentive to hire people. So he goes on to say this, a reform that expands coverage but worsens affordability for millions cannot be called a success. That's right. A reform, let me say it again, that expands coverage but worsens affordability for millions cannot be called a success. Key word today is affordability. It didn't do that. Key word is that it promised a lot of things. It didn't do any of them. If we want affordability, we must end this program. And who's it up to? It's up to you men. This is a republic. They're supposed to go up there and represent you. So it's going to be up to us to send a lot of people to D.C. that want limited government and affordability and giving people the opportunity to thrive that are hardworking. Because this was an epic failure, and it also harmed freedom in the Constitution as well. It took power from the states and the people. It was a matter that should have been done in the states. So, again, you didn't have to polarize the nation with it. You could have done it in the states. It polarized the nation. You could have done this in the states, and it would not have. And then each person, each individual in that state could fight for it, and you can today. If the Republicans want to make that deal, I don't think they will at all. I don't even think they've come up with this. So you got to judge it. Again, Milton Friedman said this. He says it. You can't judge it by intentions, you've got to judge it by its outcomes. And from 2010 through late 2025, it's failed in its most important goals. The financing model was unsustainable, and it still is. They're still arguing today. It's still not on its own. They're still talking about subsidies. The Affordable Care Act, called the Unaffordable Care Act, did not work out well. It was a push towards socialism that didn't work. So where do we want to see this country grow? And you have a decision to make, men. You have to stand and make an argument for limited government, the Constitution, and decreasing the size and scope of the federal government. This failed. If you look at the entitlements in the federal government, it's failing. It's also creating disincentives for you ambitious men, for you strong men, for you hardworking men. Limited government is the way. The Constitution is the way. And we must stand for it lawfully and peacefully. Go to your rep's office, get around, talk to people, do things. Get active and vigilant. Because it's going to take us to save this republic, not Washington, D.C. Thank you, and have a magnificent day. If you like this subject, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification button. Thank you.